Kale stepped down from the gleaming silver craft onto the cool metal floor of the Earth's research station with a careful grace that betrayed his alien strength. His tall frame bathed in the soft glow of overhead lights. He had traveled across light years to serve as a dream reader, a rare specialist among his people. And now he felt a gentle thrill mixed with a flutter of nervous hope as he prepared to test his abilities on the first human volunteer. Dr. Myra Chen stood across the laboratory's glass divider, clutching her small tablet to her chest, her heart beating in a familiar rhythm of excitement and fear. She had devoted years to studying the mind's hidden landscapes, but nothing in her experience could prepare her for sharing them with an alien who could walk through her sleeping thoughts like open doors. Kale's large, expressive eyes held kindness and emotion he knew humans prized, and Mira found herself smiling even as her palms went damp. Their colleagues had watched in hushed wonder as Kale explained the gentle art of dream reading, a soft touch with energy threads, careful alignment of consciousness, and always respect for the dreamer's privacy. Tonight, under the hum of quiet machines, Mira offered herself as the first bridge between worlds. She lay back on the cushioned chair, breathing deeply as Kale extended his slender fingers toward her temples, sending a soft pulse of calm that soothed the flutter of her nerves. In that instant, Mira felt a spark of warmth travel through her mind, as if a gentle hand brushed away her worries and replaced them with calm curiosity. Kale watched the dream patterns dance across the holoscreen, his brow creasing in concentration. He saw images of Mira's childhood home sunlit porches, laughter in familiar hallways, and interpreted them as her deepest longing to return home, and perhaps his gratitude for his kindness. He imagined she must miss her world terribly, and must truly value his peaceful presence. Meanwhile, Mira felt a thrill of connection. Leaving Kale had truly understood the joy she felt when she remembered summers with her grandmother. Her heart swelled with affection for him, though she worried she might be misreading his gentle attentions. When Kale gently withdrew his hand and stepped back, Mira opened her eyes to meet his shimmering gaze. She felt as if she had just revealed her soul in a way that no human colleague could match, and she felt unexpectedly vulnerable. Kale bowed his head slightly, offering a small gift of glowing crystals, the traditional sign of warm regard among his people, believing he had honored her feelings. Mira hesitated, caught between delight at his gesture and fear that accepting might bind her too closely to an alien she barely knew. In that moment of silent exchange, the laboratory felt charged with a delicate tension. Machines hummed, lights glowed, and somewhere in the air, an unspoken question hovered. What happened when two beings tried to share intimate truths but spoke entirely different languages of the heart? Mira reached out and accepted a single glowing stone, its light pulsing softly like a living thing in her hand. Kale's relief was almost visible, a slow, peaceful exhalation that seemed to light the room. As the crew of humans and aliens watched, in respectful silence, Mira realized that she would never look at sleep in quite the same way again. Somewhere between curiosity and longing, between careful science and gentle emotion, a fragile bond had formed, a bond that could change not only their lives but perhaps the fate of their two worlds. Kale stood in the softly lit corridor outside Myra's lab, still feeling the gentle warmth from her touch on the glowing crystal he had offered. In his mind he replayed every flicker of her expression, convinced she had welcomed him with open curiosity. Yet when he saw Mira step toward him, she had only given him a polite nod and slipped the crystal into her pocket, as if it were merely a tool, not a token of friendship. He stiffened with uncertainty. Inside the lab, Mira fidgeted with her tablet, heart racing as she prepared for a second session. She smiled at Kale, but inside she wondered if accepting his gift had been a mistake. What if his people expected more than friendship? No, would she harm the fragile trust she felt growing between them? Taking a steadying breath, she invited Kale to join her by the holoscreen, where dream data shimmered like distant stars. Kale moved forward, lifting his long fingers in a respectful salute before reaching out to interface with the machine. Pulse of calm energy washed through Mira's thoughts again, carrying a silent hope that this time he would see her true feelings more clearly. As he slipped into her dream, the holoscreen pulsed with images of her walking through sunlit fields with her grandmother, laughing beneath a wide sky. Cale saw these as signs of deep affection and gratitude, and he resolved to express his deep respect for her family ties. When he stepped back, Mira met his gaze and saw something in his alien eyes that she took for admiration of her personal history and of her own strength. She offered him a warm, human smile and said softly, "Thank you," but Cale heard an echo of farewell. He bowed and pressed a finger to his chest, a gesture his people used to convey heartfelt devotion. Myra felt her cheeks flush. She interpreted his action as an intimate vow, though he intended only to show gratitude. Panic flickered in her chest as she realized she had misread him again. Unable to return the vow she believed he sought, she murmured, I need to review the data," and stepped back into the lab's control room. Cale's tall form bowed slightly, and he retreated into the corridor, confusion coursing through his veins. In the control room, Mira sank into a chair and stared at the holoscreen, replaying every gesture from Cale as if searching for clues. His constant politeness felt suddenly heavy, as if behind each careful smile was an expectation she could not meet. Her heart pounded with guilt. Outside, Cale leaned against the cool metal wall, trying to sort his thoughts. Believed he had honored Myra's dreams and shown her respect, yet her sudden distance pained him. He wondered whether he had offended her by misplacing his affection. The hum of the station's systems sounded like a chorus of questions in his mind. That evening, the research team gathered for a meal in the communal dining hall, a wide space, bathed in soft blue light. Myra entered with measured steps, her emotions still tangled, spotted Cale alone at a corner table, staring at an untouched tray of food. She hesitated, her compassion for him outweighing her fear of misunderstanding. Approaching him, she offered a gentle hello and sat down across from him. Cale's relief was visible in a slight easing of his shoulders. He smiled and gestured. To share his tray, Mira accepted a piece of alien fruit that glowed faintly in her palm. She bit into it, savoring a sweet tang, and Cale watched her with hopeful intensity. For a moment, their eyes met, and each believed the other had finally understood. But as Mira set the half-eaten fruit aside and stood, Cale interpreted her leaving as rejection. He lowered his head, convinced he had driven her away. Mira stepped into the quiet corridor and pressed her palms to her temples, remembering Cale's gentle pulses in her mind. She did not know how to speak his language of touch, and he did not yet grasp her simple words. Both felt the ache of unspoken emotions, standing separated by only a few meters, but divided by a gulf of misinterpretation. The two began to realize that genuine friendship, perhaps even the promise of something deeper, would require more than polite science and careful rituals. It would require learning to see through each other's eyes and to speak each other's hearts. And so, as the station lights dimmed for the night, Mira and Cale faced their own uncertainty, each determined to bridge the gap before it grew too wide to cross. In the grand hall of the research station, tall pillars of polished metal rose to meet a ceiling of softly shifting lights that mimicked the sky at dusk. And tonight those lights were set to honor the first human-alien cultural exchange. Dr. Mira Chen stood beside the long banquet table, her heart fluttering like a bird as she smoothed the front of her simple gown and checked her reflection in the polished surface of a serving tray. Across the room, Cale approached in his ceremonial robes, flowing without seams. Tinted the deep violet of his homeworld's twilight tanned, carried in his slender fingers a small, ornate box carved from alien wood. He believed that sharing a family heirloom would show Mira the depth of his respect. But he did not yet know that his ritual might read as more than courtesy in human eyes. As he drew near, Mira offered him a polite nod and a gentle smile, though inside she wondered what she should say. The other scientists and diplomats paused their conversations to watch, sensing the tension between two worlds meeting under one roof. When Kale opened the box for her, the room hushed and a soft blue glow spilled onto the tablecloth. Inside lay a single crystalline flower that pulsed with inner light, alive with energy. In Kale's culture, this was a gesture of deep friendship and lasting goodwill. To Mira's human sensibilities, it felt intimate as though he were declaring something more personal. She blinked, her pulse quickening, and accepted the flower with both hands. The moment her fingers brushed the crystalline petals, Kale interpreted her careful grasp as a promise of affection. He bowed deeply, his forehead nearly touching the floor. The crowd breathed in unison. Across the room, a visiting ambassador from Earth's council laughed softly at a comment from her aide, and Mira joined in, her warm laughter echoing off the metal pillars. Kale's head snapped up, and he watched Mira's laughter as though it were an invitation. In a swift motion, he reached toward Mira's hand, intending to offer a reassuring touch on her wrist, another sign of closeness in his culture. Mira recoiled, startled by the unexpected contact in such public view. Her smile froze, and she stammered an apology before stepping back. The assembled guests murmured, curious and uneasy. Kale withdrew his hand as though scalded, his own confusion reflected in the glow of the crystalline flower. He held the gift close to his chest, uncertain whether he had honored or offended her. Across the table, Myra's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She had meant only friendship, but now she worried she had hurt him. The ambassador, accustomed to diplomatic finesse, stepped forward to smooth the moment, offering Kale a glass of tea infused with earth spices. A neutral gesture meant to bridge cultures. Kale accepted and drank, but each sip felt awkward, bitterness reminding him of the distance growing between them. Mira, gathering courage, stepped beside him and raised her glass in a quiet toast to their shared work. Kale hesitated, then lifted his cup in return, and for a brief heartbeat there, eyes met in understanding. But the fragile connection shattered when a flash of red lights swept through the hall, an alert requiring the banquet to end early. The guests rose in confusion, and as they filed out, Mira reached for the crystalline flower, intending to keep it safely, but Kale gently pulled it back, murmuring words she could not decipher. She stepped away, her heart aching with regret, while Kale watched her retreating figure, convinced she wanted nothing more to do with him. In the hush that followed, the hall stood empty, but for the echo of a misunderstanding that had grown too large, and somewhere in the distance, the soft hum of machines whispered a warning. If these two souls did not learn each other's true languages soon, the promise of peace between their worlds might slip through their fingers like sand. Dr. Mira Chen sat alone in the dim glow of the empty laboratory, her fingers tracing the cool surface of the holoscreen as she replayed every awkward moment from the banquet. She pored over the data, wondering why Kale's gestures of respect had felt so different from human courtesy. Meanwhile, down the corridor, Kale pressed his forehead against the metal wall, struggling to sort his thoughts. He had meant only to honor Mira with the gift of his family's crystalline heirloom, yet her recoil had made him doubt everything he understood about human feelings. Both felt the weight of misunderstanding like a barrier growing between them. Late that night, Mira's lab assistant timidly knocked on the door and brought her a steaming cup of tea. Mira accepted it with a small, grateful smile, then held the cup between her hands and let the warmth seep into her palms. She thought of Kale's gentle pulse of calm energy when he first entered her dreams. She realized that beneath her scholarly caution was a real desire to connect with him. At the same time, Kale wandered the station's empty corridors until he reached the viewing deck. He looked out at the swirl of stars and distant nebulae, and he felt a familiar ache of isolation. He had spent centuries traveling alone, offering comfort to dreamers across the galaxy, yet he had never allowed himself to hope for friendship. Now, for the first time, he felt a longing he could not name. Back in her lab, Mira powered up the dream interface and recorded a new session. "I want you to see me as I see you," she whispered to the holoscreen. Kale, receiving the message, hesitated only a moment, before responding with the low hum of his energy threads. Slowly, he extended his consciousness into her dreamscape, weaving a careful web of calm. Mira closed her eyes and let herself drift, focusing on the sensation of his presence, like a gentle hand guiding her through sleep. In the dream, she stood in an endless field of silver grass under a lavender sky. Behind her, she heard a voice, but before she could turn, the grass parted to reveal Kale on one knee, offering her a single glowing crystal. She blinked, startled by the familiar gift, but this time she did not pull away. She accepted it, her hand trembling as she held it close to her heart. Suddenly, the field shimmered and changed. She was lifting her grandmother's photograph, and Kale stood beside her, his tall frame radiating soft light. He reached out, not to touch her wrist or press his palm, but to place the photograph in her hands. In that moment, Mira felt his true intention. Not a vow of devotion, but a simple wish to share in her memories. Tears filled her eyes as she realized how he had misunderstood her earlier expressions of friendship. She turned to him in the dream and spoke without words, sending him a pulse of gratitude that warmed his mind. Kale's eyes widened as he felt the sincerity of her feelings. He saw the joy and sorrow intertwined in her memories, and he understood that the crystal flower, the robes, even his touch, had been earnest attempts at kindness, not courtship. In the quiet of the dream they stood together, two beings finding common ground in the silent language of emotion. When they surfaced from the dream, Myra opened her eyes to see Kale watching her with cautious hope. She reached out and placed her hand on the holoscreen where his projection shimmered, and he responded by sending a gentle wave of warmth. For the first time there was no misreading, no fear, only the clear light of understanding. Mira smiled through tears as she said, "Softly, I see you now." Kale bowed his head, relief and joy mingling in his features. In that small, bright moment, the laboratory felt like a bridge spanning to worlds. Outside, the station's lights pulsed with their usual rhythm, but inside, everything had changed. Two hearts, once separated by culture and language, had found a shared truth that respect and empathy could heal even the deepest rifts. As they sat side by side, letting the aftermath of their shared dream settle around them, both knew that their journey had only just begun, and that together they would teach their peoples the true power of understanding. Dr. Myra Chen woke early to the muted chime of the station's newsfeed, her stomach tightening as she tapped in her access code. Headlines scrolled across the holoscreen. Alien Dream Reader sparks controversy and has humanity misread. Our guest? The first article praised Kale's gift of the crystalline flower as a symbol of true friendship.
Oh, well.
The next warned that any intimacy with aliens could threaten human customs. Mira's heart ached as she watched clips of the banquet incident, her startled recoil replaying for millions of viewers across Earth and beyond. She felt exposed, as if the whole world had seen her most private moment of confusion. Meanwhile, Kale stood alone in the empty observation dome, staring out at the swirl of distant galaxies. He had seen the public reaction to congratulations on one channel, condemnations on another. He felt torn between pride at being noticed and shame at believing he had offended Myra. His world had been one of silent, private dream readings. He had never expected his gestures to become a spectacle. That morning, the station's council called an emergency meeting. Myra entered the conference room with measured steps, clasping her tablet as if to shield herself. Earth's government sat on one side, alien dignitaries on the other, and at the head of the table sat Ambassador Greer, her face grave. "Dr. Chen," Greer began, "public sentiment is fractured. We need clarity on the nature of your relationship with the alien emissary." Myra swallowed and stood straighter. "Ambassador Kale and I are colleagues. We share research. Is respect and understanding, but no romance." Her voice trembled only slightly, but in the hush that followed, she felt every pair of eyes weighing her words. On the other side of the table, Kale lowered his head in acknowledgement, hoping his gesture of modesty would translate properly. But some humans shifted uncomfortably, interpreting his posture as guilt or deception. After the meeting, Myra retreated to her quarters. She sat on the edge of her bunk, watching the soft blue lights pulse overhead like distant stars. Guilt gnawed at her. She had denied something she had not fully understood herself. Had she been unfair to Kale? Had she let fear guide her response instead of curiosity? Across the station, Kale wandered the corridors, seeking out the quiet hum of the hydroponics bay. He touched a leaf of a human plant, feeling its smooth veins beneath his fingertips. And he thought of the fields from Mira's dreams. He wondered if he would ever understand human caution and if humans would ever understand his honest intentions. Word spread that Kale would resume his dream readings for public demonstration, hoping to show that dream sharing could strengthen bonds. The lab filled with anxious onlookers as Mira prepared the equipment. She met Kale's gaze and saw the hope shining there, fragile as the crystal flower she still carried. She felt a rush of compassion and remembered the warmth of their shared dream. Taking a deep breath, she placed her hand on the scanner and lay back. Kale's energy threads entered her mind, gentle as a summer breeze. The holoscreen lit up with images of Unity hands clasped in a handshake stretching across galaxies. Dreamers from Earth and Kale's world standing side by side under shared skies. The crowd watched in silence, and for a moment the only sound was the soft pulse of the dream interface. When Mira opened her eyes, she saw tears in Kale's bold, expressive ones. She reached out to him, pressing her gloved hand against his, in plain sight of everyone. A ripple of murmurs went through the observers, but no one spoke. In that simple act, she showed that she trusted him again. Later, as the demonstration ended and the audience filed out, some clapped, others nodded thoughtfully, and a few shook their heads in disbelief. Back in the control room, Mira and Kale sat among the quiet hum of machines, sharing a cup of lightly brewed tea. The crystalline flower lay between them, its glow steady. Neither spoke at first. They both felt the weight of what had happened and what had been healed. Finally, Kale placed a slender hand over Mira's and said in gentle tones, "Thank you for seeing me." Mira smiled, feeling a warmth she had not known she needed. "And thank you for teaching me how to listen." In the soft light of the lab, two beings from different worlds sat side by side, bound by trust and understanding. Outside, the news feeds would continue to debate their every move. But for now, in that quiet moment, they had found a bridge strong enough to carry them both forward. That evening, the research station's corridors hummed with renewed purpose as humans and aliens prepared for a joint dream workshop. Dr. Mira, Jen adjusted the holoscreen controls while Kale arranged his energy threads into gentle loops around the interface. Both felt the steady warmth of their friendship guiding them, the hall filled with volunteers, scientists, diplomats, even a few curious security officers. Each sat on a cushioned chair, nervous excitement sparkling in their eyes. Mira offered a reassuring smile to the first volunteer, a young human engineer named Celine, while Kale sent a pulse of calm through the room. As Celine closed her eyes, Kale's fingers hovered inches from her temples, weaving a soft thread of alien energy. Mira monitored the holoscreen as images of Selena's childhood dreams formed, memories of her first flight in a homemade glider and the proud smile of her late father. The audience gasped at the vivid scenes, but Kale interpreted them as sorrow over loss. He gently offered a thought of comfort, imagining that Celine missed her father too deeply. Mira watched, heart swelling, as Celine's face relaxed and a small smile curved her lips. The crowd clapped softly in approval. Next, an alien delegate stepped forward, Lyra, from Kale's homeworld. Myra guided the interface, while Lyra's own dream began to play. They saw images of her people's sacred river under twin moons, glittering like liquid stars. Mira misread the river as danger, thinking it symbolized fear. She activated a shield protocol meant to protect the dreamer. Lyra flinched, and the room quieted. Kale hastily deactivated the shield and whispered an apology through his mental waves. Myra's cheeks warmed with shame. She realized that she had imposed human assumptions onto an alien memory. With a soft breath, she reset the interface and allowed Kale to guide the dream again, unfiltered. When the images returned, Lyra's worry turned to joy as she saw Mira sharing her sense of wonder. Lyra reached out in the dream to touch the shimmering River and Mira closed her eyes, sending a pulse of empathy. In that shared moment, human and alien volunteers felt the unity of their hopes and fears. The audience erupted into applause, and some wiped tears from their eyes. Even the security officers exchanged odd looks. Just as the workshop reached its high point, a sudden alarm pierced the station. A critical power surge in the engineering bay threatened to overload systems. Panic flickered through the hall. Technicians rushed out, leaving the volunteers stranded in dream space. The holoscreen's images dissolved into static. Mira's heart pounded as she saw the volunteers, minds still linked by Kale's lingering threads. Without guidance, they might panic in their dreams, causing real harm. Mira snapped into action. Hold still, she called, tapping controls to stabilize the dream interface. Kale sent a wave of calm energy to every volunteer's mind, knitting their threads into a protective net, summoned memories of safety, a mother's lullaby for the human children, the gentle hum of the twin moons for the aliens. Slowly, the volunteers' bodies relaxed, and the holoscreen flickered back to life, showing serene dreamscapes. Mira adjusted the power flow, diverting non-essential circuits to the engineering bay. Within minutes, emergency crews repaired the surge, and the station's lights steadied. The volunteers awoke, blinking in confusion and relief. The audience rose to their feet in gratitude. Mira and Kale stood side by side, breathing hard but smiling. Mira reached out and pressed her gloved hand to Kale's arm. He responded with a glow of energy that felt like a warm embrace. Later, as the workshop concluded, Mira and Kale walked through the station's observation deck. Above them, stars shimmered like distant promises. Mira carried the crystalline flower, its light soft but unwavering. Tonight showed me how fragile trust can be, she said quietly. Kale nodded, sending a gentle pulse of understanding, how quickly it can heal when we share our fears. They stood together in silence, two beings linked by science and by heart. Around them, the station hummed onward, but in that moment, they knew they had woven a new thread between their worlds, one that no power surge or misunderstanding could break. The future stretched before them, bright with the hope of shared dreams and the promise of unity. That morning, Grand Summit Hall thrummed with anticipation as delegates from Earth and Kale's homeworld gathered beneath the soaring glass dome, its curved panels catching sunlight like scattered stars. Dr. Myra Chen stood at the podium. Beside Kale, her heart steady yet brimming with hope, and she caught his calming gaze before she began. She spoke of their journey from first cautious sessions, through awkward misunderstandings, to the moment they truly learned each other's language of dreams, and she described how empathy had built a bridge stronger than any treaty. Kale followed, his gentle voice echoing in the chamber, as he shared how sharing dreams had shown him human courage and warmth, and how Myra's patience had shown him the depth of human compassion. Behind them, a holoscreen displayed scenes from their shared experiments, humans and aliens united in lucid visions under shimmering skies, hands clasped across impossible divides. As the final image faded, applause rose like a wave, filling the hall with thunderous energy. Mira felt tears gather at the corners of her eyes, but she held her gaze outward. Seeing faces lit by new understanding leaders who once feared invasion, now smiling at the promise of cooperation. After the formal speeches, the delegates formed lines to experience dream reading for themselves. Myra and Kale guided each pair, sometimes to humans, sometimes to aliens, sometimes one of each, through gentle dream journeys. Mira watched as hardened diplomats softened, their shoulders relaxing as memories of childhood laughter and home filled their minds. Kale observed as cautious envoys closed their eyes and let alien energy threads weave comfort through their fears. When they awoke, many wept, others embraced, and all spoke of hope. In a quiet moment afterward, Kale led Mira to a side chamber where the crystalline flower lay in its carved wood box, still glowing softly. He bowed deeply and offered it to her once more, not as a gift of ceremony, but as a token of true friendship. Mira accepted it with a gentle nod, her smile bright, and she pressed a hand to her chest, in return a human gesture of trust he now understood perfectly. Outside, the assembled press caught the moment in flashes of light, and headlines would soon declare that humanity and the Dream Readers had sealed a pact of peace. But in that private chamber, away from cameras, Myra and Cale shared a quiet laugh at how far they had come, from misread gestures and dim labs to clear shared meanings. In the summit's radiance, as they left the chamber, Mira slipped an arm through Cale's and guided him back into the hall, where Earth's ambassador approached with a formal treaty. The document spoke of a new academy, where humans and aliens would live and learn together. Through shared dream studies, exchanging knowledge in ways no one had imagined before. Mira and Cale affixed their signatures side by side, sealing not just ink on paper, but a vision for two worlds intertwined. Later, as sunset bathed the dome in rose and gold, Mira and Cale stood on the observation deck, watching distant planets turn in silent orbits. She leaned against his tall frame and whispered, "We did it." He replied with a gentle pulse of warmth in her mind, answering silently, "Together." The crystalline flower lay between them, its light steady as a heartbeat, and above them the stars seemed to shine with a new brilliance, a promise that when beings opened their hearts as boldly as they opened their dreams, distances could vanish. In that quiet glow, two friends from different worlds looked toward tomorrow, ready to dream anew for peace, for understanding, and for the boundless possibilities of unity.